Hello, everyone. Brave enough to face your fears, brave enough to move forward with your life, desperate to hear sage advice. I can't even do it. From brilliant people. Well, unfortunately, we couldn't get any brilliant people, so we decided to do the podcast ourselves.
They were way too expensive.
All right, so Carrie, what do we have on our agenda this evening?
Well, Tim, I want to continue the conversation that we had in our last podcast where we talked about obstacles. And I think that it's something that we need to explore because everybody has them. And anytime you're looking for a transformation or a change in your life, or even if you're not, even if you're in a situation where you're fairly okay where you are, or you're happy where you are, obstacles are inevitable. You're still going to run into them. And I made a comment in our last podcast where I said I get very close to my obstacles almost to the point of naming them. And that was kind of a joke, but the truth is we sometimes let those obstacles define us, or we let them stand in our way. And I've had the opportunity to do a little bit of research on that and understand kind of the different roles that we play when we're looking to either avoid or overcome those obstacles. So I think it'd be worth talking about tonight. So, first of all, I went to a holistic fair a little while ago, and they had all different kinds of healers and, therapists, and it was pretty cool. I had the opportunity, I was waiting for my friend to finish up where they were, and there was a guy sitting at this table in the middle of the room. And he had a bunch of books in front of him, and he had something that looked like oil, and he was just sitting there. Nobody was talking to him, and I have never met a stranger. And so I go up and start chatting with him. And during the course of the conversation, I asked him about what he was doing there and what he had on the table. And he had a lot of books that he had done research on. And what it boiled down to is when he was a freshman in college, he actually hit his head so hard that he was in a coma for 2 weeks. And there was some neurological damage that happened, and there were ramifications throughout his body that related back to this neurological incident. And as I listened to him talk, you could see the path that his thought processes would take. You could see when he was searching for a word and when he was going to do something or when he was going to explain something or show me a book. There was he would pause and he'd put his hand up on his forehead to think of the word, and very animated. One of the nicest guys that I think that I have ever talked to in my life. And I started thinking about that. And it's really interesting because he started talking about his medical journey and the things that had happened and what he used for treatment to help him live a normal life. And I'm sitting there watching him, and I go back to his obstacle. So I go back to that moment in his life where he experienced something that was life-altering. And the fact that he was able to overcome that and turn it definitely veered him in a different direction than what he originally was going to take. He was obviously very, very intelligent, and he was slightly nervous. You could see the longer we talked, he got a little bit nervous, and it was something that was out of his comfort zone. But for him to share the story and share the conclusions of his experience and what he's learned was far more important to him than any nervous conversation that he could have.
Right.
So what do you think?
Well, I think largely obstacles exist squarely in the land of is. If you'll remember my construct of the land of if and the land of should and the land of is, I think people who face obstacles, hurdles, if you will, spend a lot of time thinking about how those hurdles should not be. And if those hurdles were not, how much easier and more wonderful life would be. Unfortunately, that is a dog chasing its tail. It has no positive effect whatsoever. And so if you're willing to accept whatever your hurdles are, then you can find a way over, under, or around them.
I agree with that. I think it goes back to, like, from a woman's perspective, women will always say, well, if I had her looks or her body or her career or her acting ability, or if I was a supermodel, life would be so much easier. And that's not the case, because your obstacles, regardless of where you are in your life and what attributes you have, or what strengths you have, or success that you have, your obstacles are going to be an equivalent magnitude in your life to someone else in a different scenario with their obstacles and theirs. So I get it, because from a woman's perspective, we're very hard on ourselves. And you can go into any bookstore and find books for women written by women about how we can accept ourselves for who we are. And I don't understand why that happens. I don't necessarily want to blame society completely, as a lot of people do, because I believe you have a choice to embrace who you are, weaknesses, flaws, strengths, beauty, whatever that looks like. And you have the responsibility of loving yourself and being the best version of yourself that you can be. And so really, if I blame, then it takes all the accountability off of me, and I don't necessarily have to take any action because it was done to me. And that's a burden that I think a lot of women need to release, and probably a lot of men too. I would venture to say, just because I give you a woman's perspective, I would venture to say that there are a lot of men out there that feel the same way.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much everybody. I don't think that is a gender specific kind of thing at all. I think absolutely everybody are looking at their life through the lens of, this should not be the case. And if this were not the case, my life would be dramatically better. But nothing happens until they realize this is my reality, and I have to take action to be able to change it. And the only action you can't take is to say, well, shucks, this is just not my fault, so I'm going to blame someone else or the rest of the world or anything else. It just doesn't matter. It might be somebody else's fault. Okay, what are you going to do? Now what you got? I think you could sit down and freely blame many, if not most, of your problems and obstacles and challenges on circumstance or somebody else or God Almighty, if you're so inclined. Okay, that sounds great, man. How's that working for you? Is that getting you any closer to what you want? Maybe it makes you feel better. We used to talk about it all the time in the world of trading, right? Because people would always talk about how, it's Trump's fault, and it's Obama's fault, and it's George W. Bush's fault. And then, if you're old enough, it's Lyndon Johnson, that damn communist Lyndon Johnson, man, he ruined the stock market for me. Yeah, okay. How is that getting you any closer to retirement? And well, the Lyndon Johnson guys are dying off, right? So we don't have to worry about them as much. But honestly, is that getting you any closer to what you want? Because there is a hurdle in your way. Are you going to jump it, or are you going to stand in front of it and hurl insults, right? It doesn't matter. No amount of insult is going to get that problem to move. You got to think your way around that thing.
Right.
It's the only choice you have.
And I agree with that. And I think that in this day and age, especially with social media, I did a thesis for a class that I took years ago. I guess it wasn't that long ago, but it was all about the impact of social media on teenagers. And we live in a society where, and not even just teenagers, we live in a society where people are more depressed than they ever have been, because I'm logging into Facebook and I'm looking at Sally's beautiful life. And I'm comparing it to the shit show that is mine, 6 days a week. And it's depressing to me. And the thing is Sally has a shit show too.
Sure she does.
And
she doesn't show hers any more than you show yours.
Exactly. We're putting our best foot forward, but people are judging. They're doing a comparison of their life versus the ideal in social media. And that's not okay. Because when you let depression obviously we all know that depression is a negative emotion, but let's talk about some of the other negative emotions that potentially hinder you from achieving what you want to achieve. So there's jealousy, there's envy, there's anger, there's sadness, there's depression. Can you name any others? Those are the ones that come to mind for me.
Bronchitis.
And bronchitis. Yeah,
I don't know. No,
big one.
I can't. I don't know. Because I don't really think in those terms very effectively. I remember an old tennis coach from way back in the day that would just slap me upside the head with the truism: you got to find a way to win. And so that has stuck with me through the course of my life, so that whatever the hurdle is, and it sucks, there are all kinds of hurdles all the time. It feels like a constant barrage of difficulties and hurdles and things, setbacks and all of that stuff. But you still have to find a way to win, or just give up and lose. It's a binary question. You win, you lose. If you can't find a way to win, by default, you will in fact lose. What do you got now? What are you going to do?
And I think that's a good way to look at it, because one, you're going to sit on the ground and give up, and the other one, you're going to buckle in and get where you need to be and climb the mountain you need to climb. But there are people out there who they get in their own way, and they're different. Basically when I look at an obstacle, I absolutely look for a way to solve it. That doesn't mean that every day I'm taking that obstacle by the horns and wrestling it to the ground and moving on to the next one. There literally have been days where I would run up to the mountain, see the obstacle, be like, you know what, I'll catch you tomorrow. And so there is a base of people, I'm sure, out there. I'm not special, so there's got to be a base of people out there that feel the same way. So I want to talk about some of the different things that we potentially do with our obstacles that we don't realize we're doing. And one of them is the fact that we retell those negative stories to ourselves, right? And that's something that you and I've talked about in previous podcasts, is just we retell the events in our lives that potentially have hindered us from progressing or moving forward or being successful. And I think that's something it's very easy to do. Everybody has a story, and most everybody wants to share their story because it's how we connect with each other.
Yeah, even when we don't want to hear their story, they want to share.
But I think in coaching, I've had the opportunity to see that a little bit too. We blame our parents, or we blame our high school teacher, or we blame whomever in our past that hurt us or didn't support us or didn't help us. I used to love to sing, and my mom was pretty supportive. I think my piano and singing got on my dad's nerves a little more than on my mom's, because I know there were times where I'd go to practice and he was a policeman and he worked nights. And so he would have me stop so that he could sleep, and at the time I thought, he doesn't support me in my goal. No, he just worked nights and was trying to get some sleep. And had I not looked at that as a specific obstacle, I would have seen the bigger picture. So I guess that's really what it boils down to, is some of the things that we do limit our vision of what's in front of us because we're looking back. And as you get older, your perspective changes, but it leaves an open door for complaining and feeling resentful. And really, if we're living in a negative space, because we are moving into that victim role, we're not going to acknowledge the strengths that we have that will get us through whatever life throws at us.
Well, I mean, people too frequently get very comfortable with the story because the story sets you free from having to accomplish anything, having to do the work, right? So you come up against a brick wall, and many, if not most people, once they hit the brick wall, hang a painting and pull up a couch and they sit beside their brick wall and just like, well, this is it. Damn that Jimmy Carter. He ruined my life. And it's like, okay, dude, I'm not sure you were even alive when he was in office, but okay. I mean, if that story works for you, you're going to hold on to it. And if that story is not good enough for you, then congratulations, you just discovered that you have an ambition bone in your body and you want to change your situation and make it better. And that is the entry level to making your life better, is that fundamental desire. I'm completely and thoroughly unwilling to take whatever the problem is as absolutely paramount. Anything can be overcome. Anything. Ask Helen Keller. I mean, come on, dude. Ask Helen Keller. Do you think Helen Keller feels stifled in her career advancement at work because her boss is a real jackass? And are you telling yourself that story? Are you kidding me? I mean, she's little nugget, can't speak, can't hear, goes on to write books. I mean, please, come on. Seriously, your big old obstacle is not big or old or even an obstacle. Get off the couch, stand on the couch, jump up and down, grab a hold of the wall, and get over it.
Well, and I think that people, so there are three things that I believe that stand in people's way from seeing the big picture. Number one, we are more reactive to things than we are proactive. And that's potentially detrimental, because if you're reacting, then that means you're just responding to things coming at you as opposed to taking that step forward. And it can be disruptive to your ultimate goal. So if I set a goal to do something, if I set a goal to go on a trip, and I have to be methodical in how I plan that out, and I have to be proactive. I'm not just going to, even a spontaneous trip, I'm not just going to go and sit on a park bench in San Diego one weekend because I decided to go out there and wait for things to happen to me. Like that's not how it works. I'm going to go on this trip and I'm going to go start exploring and seeing things and experiencing things and spending time with people that I care about and people that I love. And so we have to remember to be more proactive versus reactive. And I know even from a business perspective, in a corporation, small business, you name it, when you become reactive versus proactive, you're not being innovative enough to compete.
Well, you're living at a tactical level when you're reactive, though, right? You're not even thinking about the goal or even the strategy. Remember, it goes goal. Under the goal is the strategy. Under each individual strategy are the tactics. So reactionary is in fact a tactic. It's putting out fires. So, yep, there's a fire. I got to go put it out. There's another fire. Got to go put it out. And a strategy would be, hey, let's hire some help, or let's call a fire department. Let's get some help in here. And a goal would be, let's stop setting fires. Let's move in a completely different direction that has nothing to do with setting fires. Eliminate the possibility of fires. And most people who are living in that reactionary stage, they're just at the tactical level. They're boots on the ground. Bullets are whizzing by. They're ducking. They're shooting back. They're tactics.
But yet their stress level is higher because they have this constant sense of urgency, and they feel pressure to put out those fires.
That's right. But the problem is they couldn't tell you what their goals were if you did hold a gun to their head, and because they think that they're so busy putting out the fires. And what you really need to do is shut it down for a couple of days, go home, define exactly what you want. We've talked about this before. And then define exactly how you think you might be able to get it. Most of the ideas you come up with will not work. A few of them will. You write those down, you do more of the ones that work, and you keep searching. But to just hang out there and go, up, we've got to react to whatever the fire is, or look at that, we're out of hot dogs again. We're running the hot dog stand and we're out of hot dogs again. Why didn't you buy more of them? And it's just, you're living in that tactical, reactionary front line in the trenches, boots on the ground. You cannot run your company that way. It's absolutely impossible to run your company that way. Somebody's got to have the vision.
Well, I would say if you even in your personal life, if you want to achieve something in a certain amount of time, or you want to achieve a goal that's fairly aggressive, it takes strategy and planning. Like, you can't start a diet and just go, well, I'm just going to eat whatever I find for lunch because I don't really have time to food prep and take my lunch. And like all of the big fitness coaches, all of the people who make that their living, helping people get in shape, they all talk about meal planning. Like, that's not an accident. And so if you translate that into other areas of your life, aside from the fitness aspect of it, let's talk about, planning your strategy on those other levels, personal, business, otherwise. I think it's interesting. The other thing that I was thinking about is, the other two situations or scenarios. There's fear of failure, and that really lends to a lot of the procrastination. So obviously we have the reactionary where, I'm so busy putting out these fires, I just don't have time to be strategic. Like, tell your boss that one day. It's not going to go well. And so, but fear of failure contributes to procrastination. So if I link that back to procrastination, I don't have to worry about failing if I never start. So what do you think?
Well, I think more people are far more afraid of succeeding than they are failing. Because I think most people fail. I think people fail a lot. I think people are very comfortable with living in their box, playing small. They don't want to take a chance, but it's not about really the failure that they're pretty comfortable with. It's about coming out from the shadows where the whole world can now see them and say, oh my gosh, you sing. Well, you sing earlier as an example, right? And so you have this person who finally summons the courage by not doing anything with their singing talent. They are in fact in a perpetual state of failure. And you can tell yourself that that's not the truth. You didn't fail because you never tried. But when you lay your head down at night, come on, you know good and well that that's the same thing as failure, right? And so people get very comfortable with failure and they get very afraid of success. And the only thing they're really afraid of is just the judgments of others, whether they succeed or fail. Here's the thing. If you go out and you start a YouTube channel and you start singing your own original songs on your little YouTube channel and you start sending your songs out to, I don't know, big YouTube stars or vloggers or Instagram people and say, hey, use this as your theme song. Use my background music. Use this original composition with my original voice or whatever, because I want to get the message out there and get my songs out there and I want to be out there and be known for this, okay? One of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to kind of suck and people are going to say, you suck, dude, that was terrible. Nobody wants to use your crap. You suck. You're awful. Or it's actually going to be relatively good. In which case, rather than people you don't know being hateful, people you do know in your immediate circle are going to be hateful. Do you know what I mean by that? Like,
what? Because of the jealousy, or
because crabs in a bucket? Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Because crabs in a bucket. So the minute you put yourself out there and you are producing your original compositions and you're starting to get any traction at all, right? The first run of people are going to be you suck, because that's just what everybody says from square one, no matter what. I remember having a job in college like years ago. I'm working at this, I was working at a hospital, right, with a bunch of other people. And so I can remember people at the hospital. I would sing to myself. I would do my own singing. I would sing to myself. I'm walking up and down the halls kind of singing to myself. And sing out once in a while just to be fun, just to be crazy and outgoing. And the initial response to people or from people was, oh, dude, that sucks. That just sucks, right? You suck. You can't sing. You suck. And I said, well, suck as bad as I do, I'm going to continue to sing. Because I had a different perspective, right? I got the job at the hospital after being paid to sing in theater productions, both on stage and in backup theater productions where they needed dancers' voices. Like the dancers out on stage would be out there slinging around. I'm no dancer. Anybody will tell you that. And so I could stand back on a microphone and emulate the voice of that person and sing over the top of them, and the technician would like blend it in, right? And so having been paid to sing, I didn't put a lot of faith in the person who was telling me how bad I sucked. I just kept singing anyway, right? Within 5 or 6 weeks of me just keep singing anyway, people are coming to me asking for requests, right? It's like, do you know any Bill Withers? You sound like you know, do you know Dock of the Bay? Do you know that one? You sing it for us, right? And so, which is, you know, just kind of a fun thing to pass the time. Moral of the story is, anytime you extend yourself and you say, hey, I'm going to redefine or I'm going to add to the definition of me, and this is a part of it. I play golf. I sing. I dance. I play tennis. I play guitar. Whatever it is. The initial response from people, because they have that crab in a bucket DNA, is going to be negative. No matter how good or bad you are, it does not matter. They're going to be relatively negative. And if the world at large is relatively positive, then your immediate group is going to be even more negative. And you can call it jealousy or envy or whatever. I think it's more just, who is this person who's been here in the bucket with me all this time is now crawling out of the bucket? Who does he or she think she is?
That's really sad. I think that's really sad because I love to see people succeed. I love to see them achieve, but I also love my own achievements and love my own success, but I don't ever necessarily want to hold anybody back. And so that's so hard for me to believe.
So do you think that you are in fact representative of the whole? You think everybody's looking at it like you?
No.
I mean, what does your experience tell you?
Well, my experience tells me that a lot of times there's jealousy. They'll say what they feel like they should say, but deep down they're not as supportive as you'd like for them to be.
Yeah, that's a real nice way of saying it, but I think we're saying the same thing.
I think we are too. Darn it. Oh, it bugs me. It really bugs me. No, I get it. I completely get it, because people act weird when someone in their group all of a sudden excels or achieves far more than the rest of the group. That's why you are the average of your closest friends.
That's right. We're encouraged to stay on the bench, to play small, right? It's great that you want to play baseball. Maybe you can play for a little minor league team somewhere for a couple of seasons before you settle down and, you know, get a
real job.
Get a menial job somewhere. That's right. That's right.
Oh.
I bet, you know, you just go play that little minor league ball, you know, AA somewhere in Podunk, roll around on a bus with a lot of sweaty other dudes, and hopefully your job here at the factory will be waiting for you. Because we all know this is your future. And there's nothing wrong with a job at the factory. It's good, honest work. But I think if you sat people down one by one everybody at that factory, 9 out of 10 would wish they could get the hell out of that factory. But they won't say it in front of the other 8, right? They just won't. Because they don't know which one of those other 8 is the one who is pretty happy and wants to stay. And so they won't say it. We're so afraid that our hopes and dreams are going to be perceived as vanity and audacity, right? It's just hope and dream and belief, but it's perceived as vanity, audacity. I can remember having a conversation with a guy who told me, he chastised me heavily because I work out, because I do yoga and I do calisthenics work and I run a couple times a week, because I just want to be in shape. I just want to be strong for my kids, strong for Bo. I pick Bo up every day, right? Because I've got this little handicapped boy who I never want to get to the point in life where if it came right down to it, I could not pick him up and carry him from a dangerous situation. I don't ever want to be that guy. And heaven knows I probably will be one day. That's just kind of the way life goes. But I'm going to stave that day off with every fiber of my being for as long as I possibly can. So I'm having this conversation with this guy and he's chastising me about how me working out is just vanity. It's just vanity. And I said, wow, interesting perspective. So tell me something. What exactly is vanity? Help me understand what that word means to you. It's like, well, it's when you just want to look good in front of other people. You just want to look good in front of other people. Okay, excellent. And so I'll buy that. I do want to look good in front of other people. So I guess I'm vain, right? I'll own it, whatever. But tell me something. You don't work out. That's right. And why don't you work out? Because I think working out is vain. And why do you think it's vain? Well, because I don't want to try to look good in front of other people. I'm not looking to look good in front of other people. Okay, just want to be who you are and not look good in front of other people, whatever that means. It's like, okay, excellent. And why don't you want to look good in front of other people? Well, because I don't want them to think I'm vain. Okay. All right.
I see what you did there. So I care about what people think of me and I don't want them to think I'm vain.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's the same thing.
It's the same exact thing, dude. Like except I'm expressing mine, at the gym or at the yoga studio or on the mat or wherever, and you're expressing yours in your desk chair. Except with the exception that I fully agree that I do want to look good. I want to look good. I want to feel strong. I want to feel capable and powerful and confident because I do so much better. I'm better for my clients. I'm better at acquiring new clients. I'm better at building businesses. I'm better at the consulting. I'm better at all of it, right? When I feel good about myself and feel good about what I have to offer and how I present, I just do better. And if that makes me vain, sweet, call me vain. Right? Absolutely. But what you've got to realize is that you not working out and sitting on your high horse judging me is pure vanity. And so, now what do you got? You're vain too. You may as well be working out. You may as well join me on the track.
We all care about what other people think. And it might not be others as in everyone, but I guarantee that everybody has at least a couple of people in their life who they care what they think.
Absolutely.
I mean, otherwise, why would we put makeup on to go to the store? Or why would we brush our hair or brush our teeth or do any of the things that we do to take care of ourselves?
Right.
Because, I've met people who didn't care and they didn't take care of themselves. And so the majority of people, short of maybe homeless or mentally ill or whatever, I would venture to say they even have somebody in their life that they care what they think.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely they do.
That's part of being in a society.
Well, I think if you look at the underpinnings of society, it is in fact the family unit. And I have read and written in and about this subject for a very long time, right? I mean, just looking at the difference between the family that sits at least once a week around a table and eats together and just talks about their life, right? They break bread together physically around a table. Everybody's there at the same time and we are eating. And it does not matter what you're eating, right? You can be, vegan supreme or you can be meat lovers. It does not matter. But if you will sit there in whatever your family unit is, and that family unit can be by blood, it can be progeny, it can be, traditional nuclear mom and dad, 4 kids. Well, tell me, Beaver, how was your day at school today? Well, Wally was playing, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? Or it can be like, we got together in the city and found each other and there are like these 5 or 6 people. It can be friends, right? It absolutely can be. But you sit together once a week around the table and you break bread and you eat together and you talk about your life. And if you can do it 2 times a week, it's twice as good. And 3 times a week is 3 times. And if you can do it every day of your life, God bless. You're going to have a pretty good, well-adjusted life. But the people perform better no matter how old they are, no matter what their skin color, their religion, their, sexual orientation, gender, none of that matters. You get together with your nuclear group, you sit around a table, you have conversations about your life, about your day, about whatever's going on. Everything in your life gets better, which means the core societal construct is what we refer to as the family. The family is the core societal construct. And society is built on top of those foundational building blocks. Without that core unit, you don't have society. And inside that core unit, I promise you, you care what people think.
Oh, absolutely. You can't get away from that. I mean, there are so many people, and it's funny because I do want to say one thing that came to mind. What we're basically saying is that society loves an underdog as long as the underdog isn't in their immediate circle.
That's right.
But on the flip side of that, we look for validation and for acceptance from our immediate circle. So there's a conflict there because unless you are in a group of people that all can support and love each other without envy, without jealousy, without stay in this bucket or else mentality, you run the risk of losing people. But I've even seen that with us doing this podcast. I have very close friends that have yet to listen to one episode. But yet my best friend from 8th grade listens to every episode. So I love it because she calls me and she says, "Hey, I just listened to your latest episode. I loved it. It was great." I mean, she listens to all of them. And I think I could name 1 or 2 more people in my immediate circle who listen. They all seem supportive, but yet if I post some cheesy crap on Facebook, I'm getting 65, 85, 100 likes. If I post our podcast YouTube video or our YouTube production onto my personal Facebook, I get maybe half the likes.
Right.
So I guess that proves the point, and I think that's unfortunate. So really, you have to look inside yourself and be strong enough to say, you know what? Love me or hate me, this is what I need to do, and I'm going to do it. You can either support me or you can walk away.
But the thing is, it's a little more complicated than that, right? Because it's a dichotomy that lies at the heart of the societal construct. Meaning, those are my $10 words, and I'll try to get away from them. Meaning, quite simply, if you're sitting around that table with your family, however you define your family unit, and you want everybody to be successful, you want everybody to perform and have a great life and just do really, really well, up to a point. And the point is the rim of that bucket. because you too are another crab in the bucket. And as unfortunate as it is to come to that conclusion, that realization, everything behaviorally that I've experienced in my life tells me that it's just true. I want everybody to absolutely succeed within whatever that circle is. And I think everybody does to a point. We don't want them to so profoundly outperform us that they leave the bucket entirely. And here we are still in the bucket. And so we don't want to lose them. So we hold on to them. We pull them back. Think of every sort of family-based movie you've ever seen, and I guarantee you will see this theme repeated over and over and over and over again. It's all about support and success and loving one another to a point. You get past that point and it gets very uncomfortable for people. And so what do? I don't know. It literally is. It is a chasm in society. Because if I'm right and the societal construct is in fact the family, the foundation of the entire societal construct is the family, then you roll to Thanksgiving dinner. Everybody's experienced this. You go to Thanksgiving dinner, but you know that one brother or brother-in-law who just graduated Harvard and got a job at, Goldman Sachs and is making $600,000 a year or whatever, right? That jackass is going to be there. Now, is that jackass a jackass? Probably not. He's probably a sweetheart of a guy just doing the best he can, trying to get in and get along or whatever. But I promise you, the other siblings are just rolling their eyes like, oh my gosh, I just don't even want to go. I don't even want to go to Thanksgiving dinner because I know this guy's going to be there. Or I know this lady or this aunt or this uncle or this something. And so we get frustrated when somebody is way above us. We get frustrated when somebody is way below us, right? Because we don't want, drunk Uncle Sal's going to be there talking about his third divorce and his, his third divorce and his 16th tattoo. And it's just like, do we really want to I don't want to do it, right? We want to stay right in the middle. That's normal. We're attracted to normalcy because we feel comfortable. We feel safe. But the problem is, being attracted to normalcy also equals you're going to play small. You're never going to be that guy who breaks out unless you can break your affinity for the normal. You got to let the normal go and just decide that whoever you are is exactly who you're supposed to be and that you are good enough exactly as you are. And you are going to define exactly what you want and you're going to pursue it. It goes back to that notion of having a plan. We look at each other and we say, well, these people are making fun of us and they are calling us idiots. But guess what? We have a plan. We don't need them. You can be an advisor in my life, but you do not get a vote. I'm sorry. Nobody gets a vote but me. I'm a dictatorship. I'm the world's foremost authority on what I think and how I feel, what I want. And I'm a benevolent dictator as I am, and I am an absolutely ruthless dictator as well. And it's my call, right? But that's why I come constantly. That's why step one in anybody that I ever work with, we're going to sit down, we're going to define exactly what you want and what you are or are not willing to pay for it. So if I want to walk through the Himalayas with a backpack, I probably don't want a wife and kids. Certainly not yet. And so I've got to define, do I want wife and kids more? Himalayas more. I've got to decide, do I want wife and kids now or wife and kids later and Himalayas now? I've got to define exactly what I want and what I am or am not willing to pay for what I want. And it's liberating once you've gone through this exercise and you're looking at a list of the dozen or so things that you really want and the 200 or so things that you don't want as much as this dozen things. And then you put together goals and strategies and tactics to accomplish and attack those top 4 or 5 things and you start getting them. And then you don't care that the $600,000 a year Goldman Sachs dude shows up at dinner. Because he's got nothing on you. You are living exactly the life that you've defined.
That's what it is, though. It's basically your success is a reflection of my lack of success, or my perception of my lack of success. So if you're self-fulfilled, you're going to run in circles where there's more acceptance there. You know what? I'm happy for you because I'm already happy for me. And that's a great place to be. But it also, you touched on something that equates to me as fear of change. If you leave this bucket, I may never see you again.
Yeah.
And so really your success is reflecting on my insecurities, or my perception of that lack of success, and the fear of change. Well, there are two things that need to counteract that behavior pretty quickly. Number one, if you can get to a point where you see your successes for what they are and you're proactively building your life, you won't feel that way. And the second thing is change is inevitable. Change is absolutely inevitable. It doesn't matter if it's based on success or lack of success. Change is inevitable. People change. Life comes and goes. It ebbs and flows. Things happen. And we can't stop the change that happens unless we all just sit in a house and turn off the electricity and sit there and stare at each other for the rest of our lives.
Sure.
But eventually somebody's going to have to get up and go to the bathroom. Therefore, change is inevitable.
Change happens.
So it really, how do you overcome the perceptions of the people around you and remove that obstacle? Because I guarantee that there are people out there that, because they're pulled back into a bucket, or because they're also afraid of that change in relationships, or lack of validation or lack of support, they're not trying either.
Right. And the way out of this little quagmire lies purely in self-awareness. Well, okay, see, here's the thing. If what I want to do is to travel on my sailboat, which I don't. I want a bigger sailboat because my sailboat's too little, right? But if I want to travel on my boat, and that's my hope, my dream, my goal, my belief, all of that stuff, then schlepping into Goldman Sachs and sitting in your cube and you know, slinging financial instruments all day, every day, I don't care what it pays. And so I think that's awesome if you dig it. And I think it's awesome that you're making a ton of money. And I think it's great that you feel really good about yourself and all of that stuff. And I hope all of those things are true, right? But I am perfectly self-aware that that's not what I want. I want, a couple of good cameras, fine woman, a good dog, and a nice big sailboat. And since that self-awareness has led to this realization, anything that you have, whether it's Uncle Sal, drunken, tattooed, divorced, or, Goldman Sachs, married to my sister, jackass, who makes, ungodly sums of money, does not matter, because it doesn't affect my life, because that's not the path I'm on. And hopefully Sal's getting what he wants out of it, sympathy or whatever. And hopefully, brother-in-law's getting what he wants out of it. A house in the Hamptons one day, maybe, right? I don't care. It's not what I want. That's not the game I'm even playing. But too frequently we assign financial value to it in the form of money and decide that success is in fact defined by money. It's defined by material possession. We've talked about this before. And as long as you allow yourself by default, by abdication, to allow the world, Madison Avenue or whomever, to tell you that your success is defined by your material possessions or your money invested or on hand or whatever that means to you. Usually it manifests itself in material possessions though. And you allow the world to tell you that that's what success is. You haven't thought about it for yourself in terms of what you really want. Then you're going to just pursue that path of least resistance. You've got a business plan by default. Welcome to your cube, baby. You're going to spend 40 years here. And you might amass a lot of stuff that you never actually use, right? But that doesn't bother me because I'm not in that game. I have no desire to be in that game.
Right. Well, it's about what makes you happy. You know, it's funny because I'm fairly certain that any woman over the age of 30, as I tell this story, will be able to relate. But living in an area where a lot of people got married at a very young age, you get to a point where if you're 28, 29, 30 years old, all of your friends are married and they're having kids. And I actually had I don't get jealous very often, just so that you're aware. But I actually had a friend after she had had a child. She actually said to me, "This must be really hard for you."
All right.
And I'm so that was one thing. And then I have been to baby showers and bridal showers and weddings where every single time, like, it's absolutely the way they play it out in the movies. Without fail, someone will say, "I'm sure you're next." Now, the truth is, fast forward 10 years later, and all of those same girls who gave me that look like, bless her heart, she's so pretty and she's so smart. Why is she not washing somebody's clothes and scrubbing their floors?
That's right.
But fast forward 10 years later, and these same girls or women are saying to me, "You're so lucky." Now, it's not that they're unhappy in their marriage, and they're not saying that they don't want to be with that person. What they're saying is, you actually had a lot of opportunity for fun. I have experienced things and gone places and done things that those people that all they wanted was to get married, and they met Mr. Right and they got married and they started having kids and they gave me that, "Oh, you poor thing" look, are now, "I'm so jealous." And the thing is I was never jealous of them. I was never jealous because I understood, fortunately, at a much younger age than where I am now, that everybody has their own journey. Does that mean that there have been times in my life where I've had times in my life where I sat there and said, "I really wish I had somebody sitting here beside me to watch that movie." And there have been a lot of instances where I did have someone sitting beside me. It just didn't evolve into a lifelong commitment. And so I never once, past the age of probably 25 or 26, once I realized that everybody has their own life and own path and own journey, I never once was jealous of these people. I was excited for them and happy for them. And many of them, I took chocolate and handkerchiefs or Kleenex when they got a divorce. Because it happens, because that's their journey. But if I had lived in a space where I went to these functions and heard that or felt that, and that echoed for me and it resonated with me, I would have had a major obstacle that I never would have been able to overcome. And that would have been that self-doubt and that insecurity and the things that, everybody deals with on some level. But I would have let those relationships go. I would have lost valuable friendships with people who mean a lot to me because I refused to be jealous. I wanted to be happy for them, and I was in so many cases. But I will tell you, you deal with that a lot through the years when you have not walked down an aisle. It's very taxing because everybody feels like that's what you should do. And if, you're somewhat attractive and somewhat smart, then nobody can understand why you just haven't been snatched up, and they're very vocal about it. But I never let that get in the way. And so I think that that's an important point for everybody. You have to be able to love the people in your life enough to be happy for their successes, to be happy for their wins, and understand that we all have obstacles. We all have things that we need to overcome. And hopefully, if you have the right group, on some level, they'll be happy for you too.
Well, that's going to be defined by their own level of self-actualization and yours. Right? Because it goes back to what I was just saying a moment ago. If you are clear on who you are and what you want, if you are behaving like the dictator of your life, like the world's foremost authority on what you think and feel, then none of these deviations or variations are going to be a problem for you in any way, shape, or form. It's when you are unclear about who you are unclear about what you want, that someone else's experience or performance creates a problem for you, because you see what they're doing, whether it's get married or stay single or make $1 million or, live on a hut on a beach. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. You're going to look at that person if you are unclear about who you are and what you want, and you're going to wonder, is that what I want? Is that what I should have done with my life or should be doing? Because you've never delved into yourself and figured out exactly what you want. And you can't get it until you figure out what it is.
So you live in that the grass is always greener scenario constantly.
Or certainly the question, is the grass greener? And it is that question, it's that self-doubt that leads to the cognitive dissonance between what I have and what somebody else has, and do I want what I have or do I want what they have? Because I haven't defined for myself exactly what I want. I haven't measured how I'm getting it, if I'm getting it. And so there's no reconciliation of that account, right? You're just kind of blindly writing these emotional checks and saying, yeah, sure, a Mercedes-Benz, that's what I want. Yeah, that's it. That's the ticket. That'll make me happy. And people are just like, they're just dazed and confused all the time. And so somebody else at the job gets their Mercedes-Benz, whatever that might happen to be. And damn if you don't want one for yourself, or at least you think you do, or you tell yourself you do. But guess what? It is the Facebook version of their lives. Everybody shows their sports car on Facebook. Nobody shows their payment book on Facebook. Think about that. Nobody shows themselves getting up every Monday morning. Got to make the payment. Got to make the payment. Got to make the payment. Nobody shows that shit. They don't show that part of it. They just say, man, this is me driving my sweet ride. Woohoo. All right, man, that's great. I'm glad you dig it. Heaven knows you're paying for it. I'm just not interested in it. And so for you to look at me and say, oh, poor thing, doesn't have a sweet ride. Well, I love you, man, but I'm laughing at you. So like, that's awesome. I want you to have exactly what you want. And I want you to pay for that exactly what it requires. And hopefully you are willing to pay. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing with my life. And I would recommend everybody do exactly the same thing with their lives. Just don't abdicate your hopes and dreams and wants and desires for whatever is popular on Facebook at the moment and looks like, oh, it must be that. That must be what I want. I spent a decade on a sailboat between my friends' parents, let's be honest, okay? In races and regattas and sleeping on the boat and going and hanging out and taking girls down there once in a while. I got to tell you the truth now. We did. We did. It was nice. All right. I don't get too personal.
Bless your heart, you poor thing.
But it was awful. It was awful. It was terrible. I was scarred for life by women. Anyway, but that's the thing. It's like, after a lot of research and a lot of study, both sailboats and women, I decided what I do and don't want in life.
Yeah, that goes back to being reactive versus proactive. So really defining what you want, being proactive, gaining self-awareness to the point that it doesn't matter whose acceptance you have or who's cheering you on, and driving towards the goal, but making sure it's your goal. It's not put on you by somebody else or some scenario or society or a situation. It's your goal. What do you want? It always comes back to that.
The only thing I would add to that is that the self-awareness component is the single most important by far. Got to be self-aware. Self-awareness component is the single most important by far, because otherwise you are allowing someone to tell you what you think and how you feel. And when you do that, you're setting yourself up for failure, essentially every time. Maybe Madison Avenue gets it right. Maybe your uncle gets it right, or your mom or your dad or whomever. Maybe they just figure out exactly what you think and feel and what you want, and they tell you what that is, and you go get it, and they're right. But the chances are pretty small. Whereas you telling yourself exactly what you think and how you feel, determining what you want and going to get it and being right about it, the chances are pretty near 100%. If you've done the research, pretty close to 100%. You might get there. You might get up on stage in front of 20,000 screaming fans and sing your song and think, this sucks, right? But you're probably not going to. Right? Now, the time when you might do that, you're more likely to do that, is when your, stage mom has pushed you through that process all of your life. And you're secretly introverted and you never wanted to sing or be a singer. But here you stand with a modicum of success, because you won't get to the 20,000 screaming fan level unless you have an absolute burning passion for it. But you'd find you don't really have a passion for it, and you're at the little club level with, 200 or 300 people really impressed with what you're doing. And you'll look up and say, this sucks. This sucks. This is not who I am. But it's much better to sit down with yourself and by yourself and go through a process to determine what you want. That's a very safe bet.
It makes sense. I like it.
Well, on that lovely note, we will wrap it up. So thanks, as always, for showing up and being here with us. It has been a pleasure, and we look forward to getting together next time in another couple of days. Until then, and as absolutely always, dream your life.
And live your dreams.
Okay, good night.
Bye-bye.